Have you ever wondered how Graphic45 made those adorable and fun little ATC tag albums? I don't know how they made theirs, but I found a way to recreate the same result at home using just a few sheets of cardstock and a piece of heavyweight chipboard. I even found a way to recreate the tags in case you ran out or can't get them in time for your project. I noticed the little tag albums were discontinued after making my brand ambassador project featuring one from my stash with the new Let's Get Artsy paper collection. As a result, I decided to recreate this beloved base album in my own design. I think you'd have a difficult time telling my mini album from the original. I don't have the ATC tags in the size I wanted either, so I created a workaround for that. It takes a few more tools and some extra time, but I was tickled with how similar my tags were to the top quality ATC tags by Graphic45. It's nice to use the pre-made tags at the same time, especially if you already had some in the color you wanted. But if you're interested in the project, just stay tuned with me. I have all of the information and cut list and everything in the instructions to make it. It has the pocket page with the tag in it, the open page, the 4 different signatures, and then I also have a separate video and PDF tutorial with the decorate that Let's Get Artsy. And then spoiler alert, the base project that we make in this tutorial, the manila album, I thought the manila would be easier for you to see what I'm demonstrating. I decorated that using the same Let's Get Artsy PDF instructions, but then the the new beach theme papers. I think it's The Beach is Calling by Graphic45, and I was stunned how beautiful the other album came out. I think it even came out better than the Let's Get Artsy album that inspired the project. But anyways, here's a good look at the base album so you can see what we're going to make. There's the 2 different Let's Get Artsy albums that we made in that video. But as I said, I'll have all of the information in the description box. I'll put the cut list or the cuts up on the screen as we create it. We're going to cut as we go, and I like that. You don't have to keep track of too many pieces. If you want the instructions here, you can snap a picture. This is, we did make a couple corrections to it during, so the one that will be in the description box will be correct. The cut lists on the screen will be correct, and then I'll make a PDF for that available for just a couple dollars in my Etsy shop. I'll add a border, I'll make some things bold, I'll make it a little bit better looking, so if you just want to buy one and print it out, you can do that. But to get started, you need a few tools and supplies. You'll need 6 to 7 sheets of cardstock. This is the first change off the sheet, was we needed an additional sheet of cardstock. And I think the only other change was I just made change the size of something slightly. I'll explain that later when it comes up when we're making the tags. If you bought tags, then I don't think there's any other changes than that. But you'll want to grab the necessary cardstock. You don't have to use manila. You can use some sort of a color, or the first one I made was in black, and you can obviously do that as well. Right, in the sample I recreated the black version to go with the Let's Get Artsy project, but I did have tags in the manila color, but still demonstrate in this video how to make them, just in case you don't have the manila. Maybe you had the opposite problem I did. You have the ATC cards in black, but then not in manila. So yep, even though I had the manila tags, we go ahead and make them in here. Let's start making our project. I have my cutter out here, and I cut down a 12 by 12 to 8 by 12. This is lightweight generic cardstock from Hobby Lobby. Okay, I forgot to get my chipboard, so I paused the video and came back here with the chipboard. I'm just using an 8.5 by 11 piece. I used to use these for making journal covers, but now I need to start with a 12 by 12 to get the size journal cover I need. So I have a small supply of these left, and this is a great project to use those up. You could also use some scraps, since we only need 2 4-inch by 5-inch pieces and 1 2-inch by 5-inch piece. The way I like to cut it is to put this in the cutter with the portrait orientation, or the tall side up, and then cut it to 5 inches first, And then once we get our 5-inch piece together, cut that down into our two 4-inch pieces and the 2-inch spine piece. And just in case you're wondering, I'm moving at twice the normal speed. I've sped up the video twice the speed I was actually moving. Okay, I think I'm all ready to go, but I forgot my supplies. So I'll come back with the supplies in just a second here. There we go. All right, now I have my glue, a ruler, some scissors, a pencil, a bone folder, optional, and double-sided tape. So the way I like to do it is where I get all of the pieces set out on our paper to make sure that they'll fit and that they're lined up, and then glue down the center piece that's going to be the spine first. We want to leave about a 1/16 of an inch gap between the chipboard pieces. It really needs to be the thickness of your chipboard. So if you're using thicker chipboard, you would need a larger gap, and thinner chipboard, you could get away with a smaller gap. But I think you can see visually about the amount of gap that I left there. And I've made quite a few of these. I used to have a little wedge piece as a sample that I would wedge in the gap to make sure it was the right size. But now I've just gotten used to looking at it and know what it should look like. Here I am forgetting to use my bone folder. It's one of the few times I remembered to bring my bone folder to the filming area for use and then had forgotten. So I unnecessarily, superfluously just bring it out and use it, even though I didn't need it. All right, so I'm showing here that when you cut the corner out that we just scored, you want to leave plenty of room between the corner of the chipboard and where you cut the edge of the paper. If you get too close to the edge of the chipboard, it'll poke out of the paper when we wrap it. The next thing I like to use for this stage is double-sided tape. I like to use 2-inch double-sided tape. So let me pause the camera. All right, now I'm back with the wider double-sided tape. I like to, it's a little bit more, it's quite a bit more expensive. So I only use this really wide tape in certain, for making covers. For making scrapbooking and journal covers. That's pretty much it. Everywhere else I use the thinner, more narrow tape. So we want to burnish down the double-sided tape and make sure that we have really good adhesion there, that this is going to stick down, and where we have the tape overlapping over itself is nice. It gives us double. We want to gently work that into the crease between the chipboard pieces without punching a hole in it. I like to turn it over and do the back side too. I'll do that in just a minute. When I'm gluing down these flaps to wrap the cover, I like to do the long sides first, and then the short side. I feel like that looks best. So here we are. This is really coming along. If you've ever thought about making a scrapbook album and you haven't done it, I think you should give it a try. I know before I ever had made a scrapbook album, I would watch the videos. Here I am. I've turned it over and I'm just working that into the groove nicely before we move on. But anyways, I watched videos of people making scrapbooks and I felt tempted to make one, but I just never had. I thought about it, just hadn't done it. And I suggest that you give it a try. Again, my fear was that there'd be a lot of tears, that things would go in the trash, there'd be wasted supplies. Of course, with a project this small, it takes almost no supplies. So if those things happen, no big deal. It is just paper, glue, and scissors for the most part. So what's to be afraid of? Okay. Here's our pieces. While I was rambling on, on screen, I've gathered up all the pieces that we needed. We'll need an accordion piece like this. It looks like the one I have here. I can tell by looking at it, it doesn't look quite right. Let's pinch it together the way it's going to be glued together and put it inside our book and see if that's what we want. No, I can see this piece here has 1/2-inch gussets, and the instructions recommend a 3/8 gusset, and the 3/8 gusset really fits this perfectly for the 4 signatures and the 2-inch spine that we have. So I'm going to pause the camera and go get some paper. Here we go. I got some more paper. I needed an extra sheet, but you won't if you don't have a mistake with your hinge binding mechanism, is what I call it on the instructions. All right, so I'm cutting the piece of card down to the correct size for that, as I said, the hinge mechanism That is on the back side of the page if you're looking at the instructions. We need a 4.5 by 8 inch piece for that. And I have on the instructions so that you could score it lined up with a ruler or on a scoring tool, but that's not actually how I do it. When I am scoring these, I know I wanted a 1.5 inch flap. So I'll start by putting it in here and scoring it at the 1.5 inch mark. And then I just count. A 1/2 inch is 4 notches, and then another 4 notches, and then 3/8, 3 notches for the gusset, then 4 notches twice. You can see me counting those out. And then 3 notches for the gusset, then 4 notches twice, and then 3 notches for the gusset. And if you keep doing that all the way across, 4, 4, 3, 4, 4, 3, you'll get where you have a 1.5 inch piece left at the end. Now, when we pinch those 1/2 inch pieces together, those will be the hinge that we attach our page to. So I like to pinch these together and kind of push it the way it's going to be glued together when I'm done, and hold it up in the book and make sure it's right before I use up all my double-sided tape and, you know, spend a few minutes here getting that ready. So I'm reaching over, I'm looking for where I had set my book off camera. I'm sorry for the pause there. I just paused the camera and went to go get it. All right, so yes, it fits perfectly in the spine, just as I wanted and intended. So we're ready to glue those shut or adhere those shut. Now that we've flipped it upside down, those mountains have turned into valleys, and we want to adhere close the valleys. I want to get going on this, as I said. I want to save every second I can. So by using double-sided tape instead of glue, we won't have to wait for this to dry at all before we can continue on to the next step. I'm removing the double-sided tape and burnishing it down with a bone folder from that came with my trim and score board. We want to make sure that's burnished down nicely, and then as you can see, I just used double-sided tape in 1/2 of the valley. Often I forget, get overexcited, and glue this piece into the cover right now. And it's better if you don't, because it's a lot easier to get the double-sided tape on these hinge pieces before you put it in. So you need to cover both sides of these little hinges with the double-sided tape. You don't want it to be that full 1/2 inch size, because at least I don't. It requires a little bit too much perfection for me. And with as small and tiny as this is, this narrow tape is just right. If I don't get it on there straight, there won't be any sticky tape hanging out the bottom. So when we assemble this, the pages, each one of those signatures will slide on to one of these hinges. To make it easier to slide those on, I'm angling the corner on those, and that's definitely much easier to do before you put the hinge mechanism into the spine. But I will tell you, 9 times out of 10 when I'm making scrapbooks, I have glued this thing into the spine before I get the double-sided tape on or get it trimmed down. So if you've done that, don't worry about it. Again, I just get so excited about building it that I forget. So I'm taking my extra wide double-sided tape, and this time it perfectly fits across the back of this piece. The reason why I put double-sided tape on the inside of the spine there is sometimes I piece together strips of the tape, and there's little gaps between the tape. And by putting the double-sided tape inside the cover, I made sure that when this goes down, that there will be double-sided tape coverage on that all-important crease that we want to go together. So yep, turns out I didn't really need it this time because of the I had that really wide tape over here and wasn't using the narrow tape. It's much easier if you have some tweezers or something like that to pick under here. I think at some point I do, oh, there I go, yep, I get the tweezers and use those to pick that apart. And then we want to center that top to bottom at left and right. We want to make sure none of those pages are going over the crease, and then burnish that down. Will be holding the weight of all the pages and everything in here, and we don't want this to come popping off out of the book. And it's a reason that you need to use good quality supplies. If you got to this point, it has happened to me once, and you're using an inferior double-sided tape, you get everything all decorated and in the book, and then the hinge starts to peel away from the cover because the tape wasn't very good. good. So anyhow, I'm using some scraps here. It isn't as appealing as using the correct size piece that I have in the instructions. So to finish the inside of the cover, that wasn't in the written instructions that you may have taken a screenshot of, but it is in the finalized version of the instructions. We need two 4.5 by 3 inch pieces. And I think I changed my notes on that a couple times because that 4.5 inch tall piece coordinates better with the pieces on either side. I'm sure it doesn't matter. Once the book is decorated, we won't see that this little piece doesn't match. And then I'm like, no, that doesn't work. So anyways, I didn't have these in my instructions. And that's why I did all the work for you. So you won't have to figure this out. So I decided I'll just cut it a little more narrow. It will fit and it's good enough. It's only 4 inches tall though, because I was using a scrap. And I really wish it was 4.5 inches tall because of that little gap right there and there where it's just not the same height. So anyways, I fixed the PDF instructions. They have the correct size piece to fill this little spot. I don't know. Even though it'll be covered up later, I would know that it was like that. Or maybe I wanted to give somebody the blank album to decorate themselves, and we'd want to make sure that it looked as professional as possible. So anyways, at least I do. I'm really excited about making these and having them look as good as I can. It doesn't take a lot of time, but we do spend some time. Now we're moving on to the pages. We'll need 4 signature pages. And to do that, we need a piece that's 10.5 by 9 1/16, or 9 and a hair, not quite a 16th. The problem with my cutter is it doesn't mark 9 inches or anything beyond, so I'm guessing what 9 1/16 is. So all of my pieces need a slight trimming. I cut them slightly over so I can trim it down to be perfect. When you score, if you started with exactly 9 inches and you score it in half, one of the sides will be slightly shorter than the other, and you'll still end up needing to trim things. So anyways, I will show you a couple times here how we fold this piece together, but you can glue those shut to be top-loading pockets, or adhere those shut to be top-loading pockets if we just used a hinge, but we're not doing that. We'll be gluing those shut into pages, and the way we make those 2 pockets on either side of that open center pocket is using 4 of these little pocket pieces. So we'll cut them out. It is, what was it for the pocket piece? Let me look. And I'll put that up on the screen as well. Here we go to create pocket pieces. 4.5 inches by 3 inch piece. And we want to score that down the center to create a piece that is 4.5 inches long with 1.5 inches on either side. And then we rotate that to score either end of that piece a 1/2 inch. And trim it to create the pocket. But I don't know why I'm bothering to explain all that to you, because I'm going to demonstrate it for you right now. On my cutter, it's challenging to cut that 1.5 inch because that's just under the ruler. I hold it under my fingertips and cut 1.5 inches off of each one of these 12 by 12s. So that I can get to 10.5 inches, since there's no 10.5 inch measurement on this cutter. And I do that to 3 of the pieces. I had one of the pieces there as a sample for you. And then I'm going to cut all of the page sections first, and then we'll come back and we'll cut those smaller pocket pieces that I was demonstrating for you. The next thing that we'll need is we'll want our scoring tool out, or if you're using a ruler and a scoring tool, that'll work. We want to put this portrait orientation on the scoring board, or with the narrow side up, and then score that down the middle. That should be at the 4.5 inch mark. Once we fold this in half, that's where we'll see what we need to trim off. We're not going to do that yet though. We rotate it 90 inches and we score it 3.5 inches and 7 inches. And this will make it perfectly into thirds going that way. And we just need to do that with each of our sheets with all 4 of your sheets of paper. Once you have those scored, you want to cut up that center score line through the first 2 sections to the last section. I was using those short scissors and I don't think I've ever made such a terrible mess. You don't want to cut the middle out like I did. I'm just trying to clean up the mess I made using those tiny little red scissors and cutting it all crookedy. So here it is. You just fold it in half and then fold each of the side pieces pinched together into a page. We will do this repeatedly. So if you had a hard time seeing what I was doing there, don't worry about it because we'll do it 4 times. You'll see me get this together. And then when I go to glue the flaps together, I kind of hold it up and show you how I folded them together again. All right, here I am with all 4 of my sections, and I'm showing you, I'm demonstrating how I had those ready. And let's go ahead and set those aside for now and get the pocket pieces ready. Or no, instead of getting the pocket pieces ready, but wait, no. Instead of getting the pocket pieces ready, let's just go ahead instead and get these glued shut. We can let the glue dry instead. Let these sit and let the glue cure, or the glue stick cure, while we cut the pocket pieces. So I like to use glue stick for this. The trick is that you need to use a lot. I don't know if you noticed how much I got on there, and then burnish it down. If you get enough on there so that a little bit squeezes out when you burnish it down, then it will stay together. Trust me, there's been times where I want to tear it or pull it apart and I cannot get it apart. So you can see now, here I am, now that I've glued it together, trimming down any pieces that didn't quite fit, because as I pointed out, there's a couple measurements on my cutter where I'm just kind of guessing. So here it is. We folded it in half, then pinched together the ends on either side of that one center pocket that's created. I'm using my glue stick and burnishing it down. I'm going to speed this up a little bit more, or no, I'll just pause the video here and then we'll jump ahead till I've already glued all of these and we're ready to make the pockets. I'll see you there. Okay, we're all done making the our signature pages, and the next thing that we need to do is to create the pocket pages. And if we go through our scraps, you'll see that there's quite a few that should be 3 inches wide. I realized later the piece I grabbed wasn't quite 3 inches wide. No big deal. None of the measurements are on the decoration instructions are so tight that if you made this slightly smaller, you'd be in trouble. The main thing is making sure that distance between the score lines is perfect so that it fits on the page right. So I had the sample there. We need 4, so I cut out 3 more of those. Now I'm demonstrating with this other more narrow strap how I would leave those page pockets open if I wanted. This scrap here looks like it's about 1.5 inches, and I would just score that down the middle like so. I would decide just line it up so that 5 is the middle. I think I can't tell in the editing what number that was. I think it's the 4 actually. And then instead of closing those side pages, you would nestle it between the way I'm demonstrating with the center pocket. Since I already glued those ones shut, I can't quite show you how it would go in there. But you could do that with either one. Then you would have the full width of the page to put something in the pocket. You don't have to use the hinge if you wanted to make those top-loading pockets. It just, your tag or whatever you put in there would have to be more narrow. Nevertheless, I am continuing on to follow the instructions to score these pieces the way you need them for the pocket page. I will explain to you what I was just doing this first time, because as I said before, we'll be doing it 2 more times. We needed 3 of these. So we took our pieces that we cut that were 4.5 inches long by 3 inches wide, and we put the narrow side on the cutter and scored it 1.5 inches down the middle. Then I rotate it and just score 1/2 inch on either end of that piece. I fold it in half and I trim the little flaps down so that it's nicer, and then just burnish that down to get our seams nice and flat. I'm going to do the same thing again. So just in case you didn't see it, you don't have to pause or rewind. We score it down the middle to make it at 1.5 inches on either side, 1/2 inch on either end, and trim the little flaps. It's really that easy. I sure hope that someone will give give this a try and give it a try making one of these. If you've ever made a scrapbooking album before, I don't think you'll have any difficulty with this. But even if you haven't, I think you should give it a try. You might be surprised, and like me, maybe you'll just be so excited that that you were able to make it, and how great your little project is. If you're anything like me, you might have to then run in and show other family members, look what I did, look what I did. Just like when my kids were little and they used to run into me, Mommy, look, Mommy, look. I feel like that's me a little bit now with my craft projects. Somebody look, look what I made. It's just really exciting to take, just those few sheets of scrapbooking paper and some chipboard and then recreate this Graphic 45 album that I loved. I was always a little bit curious how they put it together and was really tempted on trying to make one myself, but as long as I had some in my stash and I could buy them affordably, I probably was never going to do it. So yeah, the fact that I couldn't get any anymore and used up the last two in my stash to do the Let's Get Artsy decoration project. So here I am using that pocket piece to close up the bottom of that pocket, and the way we attach it still leaves that center pocket open. So if you wanted to add a journaling card or ephemera or something to that long open pocket, you can still do that. I wanted to just show us how to recreate the base album the way it was and to not or just like it. I think the original album, I'm almost positive, would have been cut from a single piece of paper and have accomplished the same thing. But we get something that looks just like it, that's nice and easy for us with the 12 by 12 papers that we have. One of the other things that you can do, if instead of using like manila or black paper for your base, like I'm doing here, is if you used one of the pattern papers or colored paper, that really gets your project off to kind of a fancy start before you've even started decorating. But as I said before, we're recreating the Graphic 45 album, and they didn't come in pattern papers or other colors. So now that we have our signature sections, we're going to take that open center pocket, and each one of those will slide down over the hinge. At first, I think I'll try to half peel it off and then pull it out later after getting it on there. I've seen some of the other scrapbooking channels do it, and it looks so slick when they do that. It wasn't working for me. I haven't tried to do it that way in so long. I thought, just forget it. So I just peeled the tape off. As long as you don't burnish it down, you do have a little bit of wiggle room. So I made sure it's in there straight, and it is. And then I burnish it down. It's a little bit hard, but if you haven't burnished it down, you can pick that off without destroying anything and fix it. And since I'm reaching out in front of me, I have a harder time getting these in here than I do normally. So there's a couple times where I do pick it off and then start over trying to line it up and get it in there, because I don't want to burnish it down until it's straight. But I want to get that in there good. Again, each one of these hinges is holding those 3-page sections with the pocket page. It's going to be loaded with stuff. I don't want anything to rip off or fall out of here. Only once have I had something, come off out one of the hinges later. And in that case, I think I just made the hinge too short. It was a big old heavy page, and I just had a 1/2-inch hinge. I should have made a 3/4-inch hinge for that. But anyway, that's a scrapbook designer problem and not, not a regular crafting problem. But you don't have to invent anything or figure anything out here, because I've done it all for you. You can see I had the little Graphic 45 tags in manila already on hand, but how am I going to show you how to make them if I just use that one? So yeah, those are really nice. We'll see how nicely they fit in the pocket, and just make sure, yeah, all 4 of them are in, and the cover's done. Wasn't that exciting? Right. So if you don't have the Graphic 45 tags, we're going to recreate them here. Go ahead and watch. I like using the tag top punch. That gets us really close to the look of the Graphic 45 tag, but you could always angle the corners and use a hole punch instead. I'll also be using a cropadile for my eyelet setting tool, and I have my little dish of eyelets there that I'm going to use. I'll start with my scrap here and start cutting it down to the right size to make the tags. This is one of the measurements I decided to change just while we're doing it. I used to have 8 smaller pieces that were glued together in pairs, and instead we're going to cut 4 5-inch by 4-inch pieces, and we'll fold those in half to be 2.5-inch by 4-inch pieces, and that just makes gluing them shut that much easier. You don't have to line them all up or be all fussy with that. It just made it so much easier when I made these tags than when I made the prototype and had the 8 pieces. So yes, to make the tags, 4 5-inch by 4-inch pieces, fold it in half to be 2.5 by 4-inch pieces, and then we'll use our tag top punch to cut those to shape. I needed that extra sheet of scrapbooking paper. Sorry, I forgot the word. I needed an extra sheet of scrapbooking paper. This was where I realized that I needed to update the instructions to be that additional 7 sheets if you will be making tags. Initially, I thought maybe our scraps would be enough to make all of the tags, but it wasn't. So you don't need a full sheet. I think you only needed a half sheet more to get us through if you need the tags. But if you don't need to make tags, then you only need 6 sheets to get through. And I bring this up, it might not seem important unless you've ever started running out of your scrapbooking paper, and if you don't live nearby and you don't want to wait for Amazon to come, then yeah, you want to know exactly how many sheets it takes to make this project before you get started, because you don't want to get into it and get so close and be like, damn or darn, sorry, you only had 5 sheets of scrapbooking paper to get started. Me personally, I would probably just grab a different color. I've done this, and then just make one that's part colored. So I was making like one with dark blue, and I ran out of that dark blue, so it was made with dark blue and bright blue construction instead of all dark blue. And in that case, I think maybe it just made my project more interesting than it would have been. So I used my scissors to tidy up where I had folded it over and glued it shut. And then since I'm using the tag top punch, I just punch each one of them out using the punch. And I find that gives us that nice, pretty scalloped look that the Graphic 45 tag has. It's not quite as nice. I do really prefer the Graphic 45 tags better. I like the really wide holes that they have in it. And then, I don't know, maybe it's just because I didn't have to make it. It seems better. But you can look, ours are slightly taller, but that top arch that bumps higher than the Graphic 45 tag, it fits in the pocket. It looks the same, I feel, once they're in there. I'm going to go ahead and use just a generic metallic color of some wide eyelets, and that'll kind of imitate the look of the giant hole that the Graphic 45 tag has by using that wider fat eyelet in there. And so it kind of disguises the fact I have a tiny little hole in mine. And again, most people don't know, but I love the Graphic 45 stuff, so it's important to me to get as close to theirs as I can when I need to recreate. I would have just used the manila tag if I wasn't doing the video, but you can see it's just slightly taller, but not in a way that will affect our book. Don't they look great in there? And put our 4 tags in. So now we're done with the base album construction and the tags if you need that. If you're interested, hang on here, and I'm going to do a walkthrough with you where I use the Let's Get Artsy instructions to decorate the album we just made with the Beaches Calling papers. So hold on tight, and I hope you'll check that out. I can't tell you how happy I was with how this album. So here it is. We finished making the base album. That's all done. And then here's that paper collection that I used. I wanted to give you a look at the paper collection and give you a brief look at the completed Let's Make an ATC mini tag album instructions that have been finished and made pretty. If you print them in color, some stuff prints in color. I ordered my complete paper collection from Scrap and Create website. I love those ladies. I love their channel, their YouTube videos, and their website. When you order a complete paper collection from them, they'll include a little pouch with charms, and this time some ribbon for free, which was really nice. So when I went to go make this album using the paper, and you'll be looking at that in just a couple seconds here, we'll be doing the flip through. I made it a goal to use up every one of those beautiful charms, either as embellishments or as a charm on the beach themed album. And so yeah, I was just so excited that between these two projects, the cut and decorate instructions and the make your own album, you can make some really fabulous projects. Okay, so here I am. I have the completed album that I used with the Let's Get Artsy ATC tag album instructions, and then also applied it to our Let's Make an ATC 4x5 mini tag album. So I used a chipboard tag on the cover and on the spine. I noticed there's some glue on the cover here, so let me pause the camera and we'll come back and take a look. Okay, I left tiny little glue fingerprints on the cover and I just couldn't stand it. So I put the charm on the cover. I tied a bow on the top. Again, I used those Let's Get Artsy ATC tag album instructions. And then I layered it up with different layers of scrapbooking paper on the cover. And that darkest blue layer is raised up on some chipboard. And then adding the chipboard tag gave it 3 different levels. But I really enjoyed using those embellishments and how they worked on this project. And I think I like this one even better. I really did like the Let's Get Artsy album, but I like this one even better. The way I made it was just like those other instructions. So I used the patterns and solids primarily, and then this time I had an ephemera pack. So these 2 pieces are from the ephemera pack, and then those metal embellishments were charms where I broke the ring off and then glued them down. I also used my tab punch to create tabs on the first page of every signature to give me place to put those charms. So we have a little, what do you call it? A little sandcastle charm there on that one. And I did that by attaching it to the bow that I put on the tab. Here I am. I had some sample photos I used to demonstrate the other album and I couldn't find those. So I found these sample vintage photos so that we could look and show you how it would look if you want to use it as a photo album. This album is so cute. I don't think I'll be putting any photos in it. I love to use them as a celebration of the paper collection. I've said it before. I'm sure I'll say it again. Do repeat myself, I know. So yeah. But it is really pretty. I just love the paper collections. I want to get them and then hoard them. And I've tried to convince myself that the paper collection looks so much more beautiful after I've created something like this with it. And to save the paper collection in the form of this journal instead of keeping it hoarded in my supply stash for every time I want to make a beach journal. So all of the elements that we add, that I added in when I was making this project, I left open-ended so you could put a picture on there. Some of my sample photos are a little bit large for the project and would need a little cropping down to fit, but it just gives you an idea. I think maybe one of those photos that come print out of your camera on sticker paper, or those tiny little portable printers, print really small little 1.5 by 2 inch photos that would fit perfectly on that photo mat. And then this is the journaling card that I used inside the front pocket. So just like with the Let's Get Artsy album, on the reverse side of each of the tag pages, we have the cutout journaling card and the flip up photo mat section. Also on that reverse side, I used some sort of either a fussy cut or one of the die cuts to decorate the pocket portion of that page. You can see that on this page I glued it down in a U shape so to leave it as an open pocket in case I want to tuck anything in there later, and added a metal embellishment. For this piece here that cut apart, I would use that as a photo mat and probably glue a photo onto the reverse side of that to use it and then put it back in the pocket if I was using this as a photo album. So here's another set with those little tiny postage stamps. It was one of the border trim pages from the 8x8. Just, just like with the other project, we decorate this from the 8x8. We don't use anything from the 12x12 pad except the 12x12 patterns and solids. So this is our second signature here, I believe. This is the flip up mat and the journaling card that goes in this pocket page. And on this one, I used the little bottle piece of ephemera to decorate the pocket. And then on the next page, I used the metal charm that looks like a life ring on one side. And I'm trying to find the right picture that tucks under that. That little house there was a fussy cut from one of the cut apart cards that I didn't end up using. In the first place, I went back and just fussy cut the houses out and used those later. So this has a cute little like sun umbrella charm hanging from that one. I think the second signature had like a shell hanging from the tab on that signature. And here we are again on the third signature with the three little faux postage stamps. And you may have noticed that I alternated the ribbon that I used to top those tags with the dark blue and the beige, and that just came free. I used tiny little border strip pieces to decorate the pockets and other pages. And on this pocket page, I used that ephemera piece of the sand castle to decorate the pocket there. And this is the photo mat and the journaling card that went into this signature, this third signature here. And you can see again, we need a 1.5 by 2 inch photo, and I have a 2 by 2 inch square photo as our sample, and that's why it's not fitting in the photo mat. So if you have the right size photo, it fits, or if I wanted to use a 2 by 2, I'd just trim a 1/4 inch off either side. But here I am trying to show you how with the tuck-ins, how the photo just looks like you created the journal or the scrapbook album with the photo, instead of putting it in later. So here we have a belly band, and here is one of those cut apart pages that I would use as a photo mat. I would just here we go. I show you what I would do. I would just glue my photo, this I think is the better size, to this piece. And just to kind of see what it looks like, and then would put it back in the pocket. That's exactly how I would use it if I was using it as a scrapbook album, as originally intended. I had a little piece of ephemera left over. I just tucked under the postage stamp there, and I would probably just tuck another photo under there, or maybe glue a photo down under there and then tuck the ephemera on top. I have a little shell charm on this fourth signature tab. And then on the reverse side, you can see I tried to repeat some of the decorative elements to make it consistent. And I thought it'd make it easier if you were following along to remember. So on the reverse side of this pocket page that has the flip up photo mat and the journaling card, we used that shell piece of ephemera. I just trimmed maybe a 1/2 inch off of one end to get that to fit in. And then there's a cut apart. And here again, I would probably glue the photo down behind and just tuck the ephemera there, or maybe just tuck both pieces under there. And here's the second house that I had cut out from one of the cut aparts, and this beach. If you get a picture the right size, like those photos I'd printed out the first time, your photo will perfectly fit between these two tucks. That's what I'm trying to do. But I just can't get the paper under there. And then I realized I'd been a little bit messy with the glue. It seemed like maybe the glue splattered, or maybe I forgot the intention to leave that open when I glued it down. But I definitely am determined to try to get that picture in there. And I realized it's just too wide. It wasn't going to work anyway. So we get the smaller picture and wrestle her under there. Again, if you're just using the right size photo, there's no problem getting the piece in there. I'm trying to use my sample instead of cutting something the right size to fit, obviously. If I was making this as a scrapbooking album, I would just crop every photo to fit each spot and not try to force my sample into every spot. Like I've done here. So I have a piece of ephemera here, and for that photo mat that we put in the pocket, I did mat that on both sides. So that was the only change I can recall from the Let's Get Artsy album, was that I matted that tag that went in that pocket on both sides. And for this little flip up spot, again, if you had a 1.5 inch by 2 inch photo, especially if it was in landscape, it would fit perfectly in this little flip up spot. I thought it might be a fun spot to keep a little bathing suit photo if you were self-conscious about being seen in a bathing suit. But anyways, I hope you loved the tutorial, the project. Please like, comment, share with anyone else you think might enjoy it. And don't forget, you can get the PDF in the Etsy shop if you don't want to have to write everything down. Thanks again, and have a great day.